Have you heard that term, own nothing, control everything? That's exactly the position that you want to put yourself in. You want to put yourself in a position to where you own nothing on paper, meaning that it's not in your personal name, but you control everything. Because at the end of the day, that house is going to outlive you. If you don't wake up tomorrow, that house is still going to be there.
I want to talk to you about how to protect your assets with a trust. This is very important. So for the next 15, 20 minutes or so, I got a trust expert who's about to come on and is about to give you some game on how you can protect yourself, how you can utilize life insurance and put it inside of a trust, and how you can truly protect yourself. Without further ado, we have Christina, the Trust Queen, that's about to come on, and she is about to give you some game when it comes to how to set your trust up.
Thank you, Marvin. I am so excited to be here to talk to you guys about trust. Trust is my favorite thing to talk about. So a lot of us, we hear the term trust and we actually don't know what it is, right? So a trust is an entity, you guys. It is an entity just like you, just like me. It's a living, breathing entity. And with a trust, you can do anything that a natural person can do. If you could build credit, a trust could build credit. If you are able to buy a house, a trust is able to buy a house. If you are able to write a book, a trust is able to write a book. So a trust is actually superior to an LLC or a corporation or any of these other types of entities. And it is the number one thing that you guys need in order to protect your assets, right? We are so focused on building generational wealth. That's the number one thing that we're working on, right? We're trying to get the house. We're trying to get the $1 million in our bank account. We're trying to get the car. We're doing all of these things, right? We actively have it, but we never ask ourselves this question. How are these assets going to be transferred from my name to my child's name? If you are a homeowner, that house is in your personal name. And if you was not to wake up tomorrow, how do you expect that house to be transferred to your son or your daughter? The only way that that would happen is through a judge. So that means that you're giving all the power and control of what happens to your asset to a judge. Do you really want to do that? That judge doesn't know you. They don't know your children. They don't know how hard you work for that house, for the down payment to pay it off in full. They don't know that. But yet, because you don't have your affairs in order, you decided to allow a judge to do that, to allow your assets to go to probate. So the number one reason why you want a trust or need a trust, not want, is for asset protection. It also allows you to remain private as well. But when it comes to asset protection, it's going to protect you from bankruptcies, from divorces, from lawsuits, from heavy taxation, from probate, right? So what I'm explaining to you guys now is the probate process, where if you don't have your affairs in order, meaning you don't create your own estate, a trust is an estate, you guys. If you don't create your own estate and you have all these assets in your personal name or even in your LLC, right? A lot of us, we think that operating a company, you have an LLC, so it's protected. Anything that's in your LLC is going to end up in probate as well. An LLC is a limited liability company, so it gives you limited liability. So creditors can actually come after it. But if you have a certain type of trust, which is an irrevocable trust, creditors cannot come after it. So you want the full protection. You want the bulletproof trust, the one that is going to actually protect your assets so that the government doesn't take it away, so that these lien holders don't take it away, so that your mortgage company doesn't take it away. That's exactly what you want, but it has to be done the right way. So when it comes to you building this generational wealth, right? You have the house, you have the car, you have the money in the bank. You got to think about, I'm building the wealth right now. How am I going to transfer the wealth? You have the children, right? And so you want your children's children to be able to benefit from what you are doing today. And the only way that that's going to happen is if you have your affairs in order. So you have to think about, how is this wealth going to be transferred? And it's by way of the trust. The trust is going to own everything. Have you heard that term, own nothing, control everything? That's exactly the position that you want to put yourself in. You want to put yourself in a position to where you own nothing on paper, meaning that it's not in your personal name, but you control everything. Because at the end of the day, that house is going to outlive you. If you don't wake up tomorrow, that house is still going to be there. So your goal should not be ownership. Your goal should be stewardship, which is exactly what I'm talking about, which is you actually controlling the assets while you are living. That's what you want. That's where the power comes in. And then you get to control your money from the grave, because inside of the trust, you're going to put the rules and regulations of how your money is going to be spent. So you get to tell the beneficiaries what they can spend the money on and what they cannot. So if you don't want them to spend it on crypto, guess what? They can't. But if you want them to only spend it on real estate, guess what? That's where the money has to go. So it's extremely important that you guys, one, get your affairs in order, and two, thinking about we are building generational wealth. So you're already doing the work. So now you need to protect it and preserve it, okay? So one is protection, which is by way of the trust, and two is preservation. How many times have we seen where these famous families, they have multi-millions and billions, and by the second and third generation, the money is gone? So many times. It's all over the news. That's because they didn't have the tools in place in order to preserve their wealth. But Marvin has been teaching us about the tools that you need in order to preserve your wealth. That is the properly structured life insurance policy. That is what you're going to use in order to preserve your wealth. Why are you working so hard to make the $1 million, but then you're going to let your grandchildren blow it all in one generation, in one decade? No, that's not what we're doing. That is called a spendthrift. When that individual did not make the money, but they spent it all. You have to put these tools in place in order to make that money stretch for generations and generations and generations, because you're building a legacy. I see you doing it, and you want to make sure that that legacy lasts a long time, 200, 300, 400 years. So the way that you're going to do it is, one, you have to create a trust. How do you create a trust? A trust is a contract. It's in black and white. You need to have all of your rules and regulations. There are several different parties in a trust. You have a grantor, which is the person who created the trust. You have a trustee, which is the person who controls the trust. They have all the power, all the control. They make the decisions on what happens with the assets. That is the position that you're going to be in. You are the trustee of the trust. You are in control of all of the assets, but the assets are not in your name, John Doe. They are in the name of the trust. The last one is the beneficiaries. That's the person who is going to benefit from what you're doing today. You're going to benefit from the trust. Once you have established this trust and you created it, you get it notarized. It's legal. Now you can start using it. You open up a bank account, and then you start transferring assets. That is how you're going to protect the assets, by actually having them in the name of the trust. So that house, you're going to deed it over into the trust. That car, you're going to do a bill of sale and you're going to retitle that car into the trust. That insurance policy that you already have, you're going to contact the insurance company and change the ownership into the name of the trust. And now your assets are actually protected because they're no longer in your name. So if you have credit card debt, if you have student loan debt, and you didn't wake up tomorrow, that debt dies with you, because when you transitioned, you didn't have any assets in your name. Everything was in the name of the trust. So now when we're talking about transfer of wealth, guess what? There's no transfer that needs to be made because you did it while you were living. You didn't wait until you passed away and then you passed it off into probate court in order for the judge to be able to pay all of your bills first, all of your debt first, and give your kids the leftovers. You actually had your affairs in order. You created your estate while you were living. You transferred your assets into your estate while you were living. You controlled all your assets while you were living. And when you transition, there's no transfer that needs to happen because everything is already happening. All of your assets are already in the name of your trust, and whoever you choose to take over after you, that person is called your successor. They pick up where you left off. which is a beautiful process. That's the process that you want to go through. That's the process that you want your heirs, your children to go through. That's the best process. Back to preservation, right? Because preservation is the most important thing. When we are building generational wealth, we need to think about protecting the wealth by us using the trust, transferring the wealth, which is by everything being in the trust, and then preserving the wealth because we want it to last a long time. Marvin is telling us about these policies, right, that are building cash value. So what you're going to do is you're going to have the trust be the owner of the policy, be the payer of the policy, paying the premiums every month or quarterly, and then be the beneficiary of the policy. So that if anything happens to you, you have to understand you are a human asset when it comes to the trust. The trust has tangible assets, which is houses and cars. You are the person who's operating the trust. So shouldn't you be insured as well? So the trust is going to actually take out a policy on every single person associated with that trust estate. So that's the trustees and the beneficiaries. If anything happens to you, guess what? The trust is actually experiencing a loss. And so the trust needs to be compensated for that loss. So that death benefit is going to go to the trust estate. It's going to go right into the trust fund, and that trust fund is going to be replenished. So now the trust bank account, $2 million just hit the trust bank account, right? Because of that death benefit. And the trust is now going to take out a policy on the beneficiaries, which are your children, and your kids' kids, and your kids' kids. So every single person that is born into the trust, they are going to have a policy. And that is what we call a trust fund baby, right? So if you have a beneficiary, as soon as that beneficiary is 30 days old, the trust is going to open up a policy on them, and the trust is going to pay into that policy. And now that beneficiary, let's just say we're fast forwarding into the future, right? They're 18 years old. They are going to college. So they need a place to stay and they need a car. So normally they can go to the dealership and get a car, pull their credit, start making payments to the dealership. Or what they can do is they can go to the trust. They can go to the trust estate and borrow from the trust estate. So they go to the trust and they now borrow that $30,000 that they need in order to be able to buy this car. So now they get the car, and now they're going to start paying the trust. So instead of them paying the dealership $500, they're paying the trust $350. So now the estate is making money, making a percentage. What is going to happen after that? Well, let's just say that this beneficiary decides that they don't want to make the payments anymore. So now they have defaulted on the loan that they received from the trust. Well, that's okay because it was actually a risk-free loan because the funds did not come from the trust fund. The funds came from the beneficiary's life insurance policy. Remember, when that trust fund baby was 30 days old, the trust took out a policy on them. Now that trust fund baby is 18 years old. And so what happened was the trustee actually borrowed against their cash value in their life insurance. That money actually came from the life insurance company, from their reserve. It did not come from their policy. So the money is still working inside of their policy, but yet they were able to borrow the $30,000. So now the insurance company goes ahead and transfer the funds, does a direct deposit to the trust fund. And now at that point in time, the trustee went and cut a check to the beneficiary. So because the beneficiary decided to default on that loan, it doesn't need to be paid back because the money came from the insurance policy. So the trust fund is going to be paid back anyways through the death benefit. That is preservation. That is what you need to do. That's how you're going to preserve your wealth. That's how you're going to protect your wealth. When it comes to protecting your wealth utilizing a trust, it is extremely powerful. It is a no-brainer. It is not something that you want to dibble and dabble with. Every single family needs this. You need to get your affairs in order because if you don't, then the state is actually going to have your affairs in order for you, and you don't want that to happen. So thank you, Marvin.